Hi, I'm Greg Dell with Attorneys Dell Schaefer, and I'm here with attorney Stephen Jessup and Alex Palomara, and we're going to talk about short-term and long-term disability claims for pharmacists specifically. And we've represented hundreds of pharmacists all over the country for some of the world's largest employers, whether it's CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, Publix, you know, all of the big supermarket chains, wherever you find the pharmacist. But very demanding job, more so than most people realize. And we're going to talk in this video about the requirements of that job and how the requirements of that job are often misinterpreted by the disability insurance carriers, and the issues that a pharmacist can expect when filing a claim, and things in appeals that we've dealt with to help win claims for pharmacists that have been wrongfully denied by the disability carrier. So Steve, you can start with what's the common definition of disability that you see in these policies for pharmacists?
Well, the commonality, it really depends. You know, some do have pure own occupation. Some do have a conversion over to an any occupation after a certain period of time. And I think a bigger issue too, so talking about the policies where pharmacists are part of the whole healthcare, you know, profession, but it's not too often, as opposed to dentists and doctors, that you see that they also have individual private coverage. More often than not, they're only working with the policy that's provided by their employer. So that's going to vary from insurance company to insurance company, but at some point, starting off, you're at least looking, can you do your duties as a pharmacist? A lot of the policies will stay that, though I have seen them that do change after a period of time.
And Alex, when they say do your duties as a pharmacist, does that mean exactly the way that pharmacist is working at that location?
Unfortunately, no. It comes down to the national economy. Under most group disability insurance policies, you have to prove, or the insurance company makes it that you have to prove that you can't do the job of a pharmacist in the national economy, how a pharmacist, you know, does in most corporations, not your specific, whether you work for Walgreens, a supermarket, or Walmart. Whatever you guys do there specifically is kind of thrown out the window according to the insurance company and according to most disability insurance policies. It's how a job of a pharmacist is done collectively, on average, I guess I would say.
So in terms of what are the biggest challenges you see often for a claim filed by a pharmacist?
Well, we have to realize about the requirements of being a pharmacist that sometimes the insurance companies overlook certain things. I mean, I have a friend who's a pharmacist and I hear his complaints all the time. First and foremost, you're typically on your feet 8 hours a day. Secondly, you have to be on your game cognitively because you're figuring out whether the medications are going to interact. People are asking you questions. You're getting prescriptions called in. You have to figure out the different dosages. Also, you're dealing with customers all day long, so it's kind of stressful that way as well. Some customers can be, a pain. Some customers, it could be just an annoyance. You have a lot going on. So there's more to it than just counting pills, putting pills in a bottle, or just standing there all day. Or even some insurance companies think it's a sedentary job, which is almost like a joke. So you have to prove to the insurance company you have the ability to perform the physical aspects of your job or the cognitive aspects of your job.
And even with on the cognitive, with that, you said, getting the prescriptions called in, it's up to the pharmacist ultimately, because doctors sometimes, they'll write medication that's going to interact with another medication, and it does fall to the pharmacist to make sure. Throughout high school and into college, I worked in a pharmacy, and it is nonstop, fast-paced. There is a lot of mental fatigue and demand doing it, and a lot of times too, pharmacists, they don't work an 8-hour shift. They may work the full 12 hours that day, 2 days in a row, then they have a day off. So then that even builds into it. And being on your feet all day, the shelves where they do crouching down to find the medications, inventory, there's a lot that goes into it. And that does, like Alex said, get overlooked substantially.
So, Alex, we often see these own occupation definitions of disability, and we see pharmacists tend to have the most problems when there's a change in a definition. And why does that create a problem for the pharmacists?
Well, when the definition of disability changes, now you have to prove to the insurance company that you don't have the ability to perform the duties of any occupation or any gainful occupation. It takes into account your training, education, and experience. And there's also typically an earnings requirement of 60% of your prior monthly earnings. So if you're making $100,000 a year, if the insurance company finds a job that, quote unquote, you're able to do that pays you $60,000 a year, and they're going to deny your claim. It's that simple. So when the definition of disability changes, that's when we see most often people getting denied that were previously approved. And the goal is when you do get denied, is to prove to the insurance company that the jobs they found you either are not something that you can do, physically or cognitively, or it's not something that your training, education, and experience has trained you for, that you're able to do these jobs. So when you get denied, you have to prove to the insurance company, if they deny you for that change in definition of disability, that those jobs are just, out of orbit, has nothing to do with your claim whatsoever, or that your conditions don't actually allow you to do these jobs.
And with those alternate occupations, a lot of times pharmacists, it's so highly specialized. The amount of time you spend in pharmacy, school, then as a pharmacy school, all that stuff. Transferable skills a lot of times will come down to where they want you reviewing records, like you can review pharmacy records, and that's where you see a lot of it. Because there aren't in that realm, other than something like that, it's not like they say you can be a pharmacy technician where you assist, because it's not going to hit the income component. So
it's pretty much the same job.
Yeah, it's pretty, in a sense. And then, but a lot of times they try to go, oh, well, you can do this where you can review these pharmaceutical records and stuff like that. But then the old thing is with it too, and a lot of times on these denials and these other occupations, they say these occupations exist in the local economy. But the question is, did they really look in to see if these jobs and have the earnings requirement actually exist in your economy where you are living? So you can actually at times set up the claim to almost make it a de facto own occupation policy by cutting them off at the pass, that the only transferable skill the pharmacist has is really to be a pharmacist, in an occupational setting.
Most of the pharmacists, as opposed to other occupations, have short-term disability. Mm-hmm. And often we see that it's either a 90, but more often a 180-day elimination period before you can get to long-term, whereas the short-term has a 7-day, usually, elimination period. And more often than not, they'll get approved for short-term disability for a certain duration of time. And either before the short-term disability ends, or at the time they apply for long-term, they're usually getting denied. And why do we see so many denials at this transition from short-term to long-term?
Well, the big thing is the way the funding of the policy. Most short-term disability policies, even if it has an insurance company name on it, they're administering the policy. So they're telling your employer to pay a benefit. The actual disability benefits are being paid by the employer. When it goes to long-term, that's where generally, except for like Walgreens, which is completely self-insured, it's now the long-term disability insurance company's responsibility to pay you. So it's coming out of their pockets. So now they have an incentive to deny you for any reason. And it kind of goes into this idea of they have manuals that tell them this is a condition, this is how long it should be for recovery. They're looking for that. And the denial in short term, just before the transition, that's purely tactics by the insurance company, because now you have to appeal the short term. And you can win the rest of the short term, but then all of a sudden, well, we still think the long term is denied, and then you have to go through the process of appealing again. It's almost a war of attrition, where if they deny you enough times, the person may think, well, screw this, I'm just going to find a way to go back to work.
So, Alex, in the claims, most of the claimants, the pharmacists that we've represented, have pain conditions that are preventing them from being able to commit to the employer and work the 40+ hours a week that they need to work. But when you have pain, you begin to have cognitive difficulties. And a pharmacist with cognitive difficulties scares me. For sure. Because if they make a mistake, and we hear about it unfortunately more often than not, that the wrong medication or the wrong dosage or something to that nature was filled at the pharmacy, why do the disability companies tend to ignore the cognitive factors? And the fact that we know they're ignoring them, how do we prove in an appeal that a person does have some kind of cognitive difficulties related to their pain condition?
I mean, it's scary. When they deny claims, they're like you said, they're kind of pushing people back to work. And you don't want to have a pharmacist, your pharmacist, filling your prescription, dealing with pain all day, having an inability to concentrate on what they're doing in that exact moment when they're filling your prescription. It's a dangerous game that the insurance company plays. To prove your claim, I mean, it has to be proof. Proof is in the form of medical documentation. If you're a claimant, it's your duty to prove your claim to the insurance company. They're not going to do a good job of proving it to themselves that they have to pay you benefits. Like you were saying, they'll go ahead and approve the short-term disability because they're not paying. As soon as you get the long-term disability, they're paying. The way they look at it changes because now it's coming out of their pockets. Mm-hmm. So you have to prove to them that you are disabled, and proof is in the form of medical documentation, medical records, support from your treating providers. If there's any objective testing you can have done to prove your conditions, you need to have it done. If there's a pain element, pain is subjective. There's no test to prove how much pain someone's going through. The more objective evidence you have to prove your back condition or prove your foot condition, then it's obviously, it's logical that your pain will follow. There's, cognitive testing you can have done to show that you have cognitive issues, memory issues, I don't know. If you're suffering from pain while you do some of this testing, maybe the results will come back favorable for you that you can utilize for your claim for disability insurance benefits. But it is hard to prove the level of pain that someone's suffering from.
Yeah.
So, Steve, we've used neurocognitive, neuropsychological testing, not necessarily to show that the person has brain damage or the person is not functioning with multitasking and short-term or long-term memory at the same capacity of someone of like age, but for validity purposes. Can you talk for a minute about what that is and how you can strategically use a neuropsych test to show that your complaints of pain are valid?
Yeah, so in neuropsychological testing, there's going to be built-in tests to determine if it's reliable, if you're getting adequate effort, things like this. And neuropsychological testing is also meant for the general population as a whole. Obviously, if you're a pharmacist, you're going to be a higher level of intelligence than the average population that the test can be applied to. So in showing that it's valid, it's reasonable, all the answers can be relied upon, that is a way that you then say, well, if this is reliable, then we can also make sure and we'd argue that what his complaints are reliable as well, giving some truth to these subjective complaints. And even so, in the testing itself, a person may still be average, above average, but on the premorbid functioning, they should be working at a higher level. And as Alex alluded, when you're working in pain and you're doing the testing, at some point you start to have a hard time focusing, and these are time tests. I've tried to liken it to everyone has had a really bad cold and gone to work or something. It's like, and generally what you think about is, I feel like crap. You don't think about it, you can't concentrate, you don't work as well. And that's the same thing when you're in a lot of pain. At some point, it's just hard to be able to focus and concentrate. So that can present itself in the neuropsychological testing as well.
So considering that most of the claims are driven by pain, not necessarily like a Parkinson's where the person is saying, I have tremors and I can't fill the prescriptions or I can't hold things, or going with the pain, it comes down to credibility. Because you said, Alex, there's no machine in the world that verifies pain. And if you have a broken arm or something going through your skull, we can see that and say that should be painful. But since it is credibility, these disability carriers use outside tools, and they use surveillance and they've used social media profiles. But explain, why claimants need to be cautious about their social media profiles and how the video surveillance is used to, destroy the complaints of a claimant.
I mean, to be honest, it's always best to be honest with the insurance companies. You'll notice that they utilize phone interviews. And in the phone interviews, they ask you, what do you do on a daily basis? On a regular, since you're not working right now, what do you do from 9 to 5 in the morning? And you say, oh, I'm in my bed all day, or I'm at home all day, this, that, and the other. Do you drive? Yes, but I only drive for maybe 15 minutes before I have to come home. Or if I'm out at the store, I'm only out at the store for 15 minutes. Then they get surveillance of you out at the supermarket or at the mall for 2 hours. And it's, even though your disabling conditions do not prevent you from doing that, it doesn't mean you can work 8 hours a day as a pharmacist. They utilized, kind of your mistruths against you and saying, listen, you told us this, and look what we found you doing.
Right.
We're going to deny your claim.
If they get you in one thing, as unrelated as it could be to your ability to do your job, they're going to screw you with it and deny the claim.
100%. So it's best to be honest in those interviews and tell them, this is what I'm suffering from. Just because you have the ability to go to the mall, go to the supermarket, doesn't mean you can work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, permanently as a pharmacist. It just does not fly. So you have to be confident that your evidence will support your claim. And even though the insurance company is going to look at it differently and have these, quote unquote, independent consultants review your medical records, we're going to do the best job we possibly can to prove them wrong and prove them that your medical records are reliable, and this is what your doctors say, and this is why you can't do your job as a pharmacist.
And one of the things with social media too, a lot of times, people will put forth their best face.
Yeah, of course.
You put on this persona of things are amazing and awesome, and that's easy for them to find. More and more claim files, and we get them. We're seeing these in-depth analysis of all their social media posting and then being used against them. Well, you went here on this day and you were at this, and so you've got to be very, very cautious. If you're going to do it, make sure you have privacy settings in place so it's not easy and open to find.
And be careful who you add as a friend. It could be a random person, and they could work for the insurance company.
I mean, you got to assume they're going to find it regardless of what your settings are.
True, but you don't make it so easy for them, you know? It's not like they can force you to give them a password during a claims process.
So be careful what you put out there, because it can be misconstrued easily.
My advice is don't put it out there. Unfortunately, if you got to sacrifice something, just stop that. Because,
I would agree.
I mean, most of them are, so you have this condition, you have horrible back or neck and you're a pharmacist, but you went on a cruise. Okay, to me, big deal. We don't know what you did on the cruise. You know, we don't have a video of you all day long. Yeah, you went on the cruise, you were with your family, you hung out, but you spent half the time in the room, or you were uncomfortable, or your back was bothering. It doesn't mean you couldn't go, but going on a cruise doesn't mean that you can now go back and stay on your feet for 40 hours a week or sit at a computer screen.
And one of the important things too in the context, since we deal with this day in, day out, and you know, if you're looking at this, you don't understand. And part of the reason why we're saying these things is ultimately we know what the insurance company is trying to do is if they end up in court and that standard of review, which ultimately kind of strips down to, they just have to have a reasonable basis to have denied your claim. They don't have to be right, just reasonable. So if they take all this little snippets here and put it together, something like, well, it'd be reasonable to think this person could do X, Y, and Z based on all this stuff we found. That's enough in a lot of cases to secure a victory for insurance companies. So it goes all these stupid little things that really don't impact or have anything to do with the ability to do the job. It's used to attack credibility and to, you know, get this idea that, yeah, you know, we looked at all this stuff, look at the reviews we did, the investigations, our conclusions are not unreasonable.
Right. Well, the benefit that pharmacists have from the claims we've had is that if they have own occupation definitions of disability, it's a highly specialized, highly focused type job that helps from that sense because we can prove and have very successfully been able to prove that you've got to have the cognitive difficulties, and if you're having significant pain, you're not able to do that type of job. So regardless of what stage your claim is at, please contact any of our lawyers with a copy of your disability policy, or if you've been denied, you'll send us a copy of your denial letter via email. You can call the phone number on our screen or submit a free consultation request through our website. One of our attorneys will immediately respond to you. We encourage you to search through and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we have hundreds of videos where we talk about all different kinds of topics, from applying to appeals to lawsuits to medical conditions, just about everything you could think of with a disability claim we've covered. Our clients are located all over the country, and should you need us, we look forward to the opportunity to discussing your claim with you.